Hey there, and welcome back to the Total Potential Podcast. I'm Cole and so excited to be joined by Jake today. Glad to have you back in the house, Jake. And we are joined by Gina Worful. I always get so excited to have time to connect with another dietitian. So, Gina is a registered dietitian. She's also a master of human nutrition, and she's nationally recognized as an authority on mastering the mind to achieve health goals, especially supporting strategies to help overcome self-sabotaging behaviors. I think all of us are going to be thrilled to hear what Gina has to share with us. So Gina, thank you so much for being here with us today. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
So before we get started, I'm always so fascinated. I don't know why this is especially true for people in the health and wellness world, but how did you ever become interested in health and wellness and, dietetics and nutrition specifically? Like, what were some of the, major milestones that led you to this work?
It's been such a journey for me. What's really interesting is far back as I can remember, being really young, my sister and I, we were both so into health and wellness. And even being like a really little kid, I would like sneak into my mom's garden and like take her tomatoes and play with the food and make weird stuff that didn't taste good. But I remember my mom being like, she would try and get me to eat this vegetable minestrone. And she would be like, please just eat it. It's really good. And she would say, it's chock full of nutrients. And being a curious kid, my mind would be like, whoa, what are all these things that I can't see? Like these nutrients, like to me, it was almost magical. And so I've always been really inspired with food growing up. And as I got older, my mom was also really into different diets and trying different things to try to be healthy. And so I just wanted to know like what was the truth. And so I was the person in high school who was grabbing the magazines off the shelf. It was like, oh my gosh, the secret to health and longevity and being fit is on page 64. I have to find the answer, And then I buy the magazine, I flip to page 64 and I'm kind of let down or I'm like, oh my gosh, the answer is in an almond. I remember actually reading in some magazine that almonds had like this magical fat in them that actually allowed you to burn more fat than what you were eating. And I was like, just so enchanted by that statement. I don't think it's actually true, but I was so enchanted by it being in high school that I was just really had such fascination and I really wanted to know the truth. So I ended up going to a university. I ended up going to Eastern Michigan University, which I didn't even know at the time has one of the top dietetics programs in the country. And I was in my first year of college. And I was like, man, what do I want to do with my life? And my mom was like, you research nutrition more than anybody. You're dying to know the answers. I bet you'll get the answers in college. So I did that. I went to a really great dietetics program. And after I graduated and got my undergrad in dietetics, I was like, this isn't it. There's more. I know there's more to learn. I know that there's more answers than just meal plans and calories and things like that. So I continued and I got my master's degree and I was like, now I'll know the answers. And it's actually just been this evolving lifelong journey that probably started when I was really, really young.
Wow, that's so cool. Yeah, it's so interesting. You're the first person I've ever talked to whose fascination with nutrition started like at such a young age and from such like a really pure place. I think that's just a really cool experience to share. So, okay, so now you start working in the world of dietetics and food and nutrition, and what do you find?
Yeah. So I graduate, I have my degrees, and I'm so inspired. I'm like, I'm going to change the world. I have all these facts. And what they teach you in school, when you go to school to be a dietitian, a lot of what they teach you is you give people the calorie plan and you do some calculations. You find out their height, their weight, what their goals are, how active they are. And you kind of come up with this calculation to figure out how many calories should they be eating. And so you do your best to like make it into a science. And then you pull together, you create a meal plan for them based on their body and their calories and counting and all that. And what we're taught is you have a nutrition consultation, they come in, you make some rapport, you make sure they're comfortable, decide what their goals are, and then you give them their calorie plan according to what their goals are in their body. So it, relatively scientific, quote unquote scientific, and you set some nutrition goals for them and you send them on their way. So I opened up my own practice and I was really excited. I'm like, I'm ready. And my first client comes in and I set all I ask her what her goals are. We figure it out. I give her the plan, send her on her way, set a few goals that are manageable. But what I was finding was that none of my clients were sticking to it long term. And I was taught that diets are bad, fad diets are bad. So you teach people about how to eat healthy and you give them a plan. So I really thought my plans were based in sound science, that I was really going to help people. But what I found was that people just weren't actually sticking to it. And I started to question, am I just like any other fad diet, but I'm just going about it my own way? And I would actually call other dietitians and some of my other colleagues and say, my clients are sticking to it maybe for a week, 2 weeks, sometimes a month. They start doing better, but something always gets in the way. They're like, oh, I tried, but this happened, or life got really hard, or I just couldn't overcome that craving. I'm really struggling to break that habit. And what my colleagues had said was, your job is to create the plan, but you can't make anyone stick to it. And while I thought there's some truth to that, I couldn't settle for that. I was like, there must be another way. I can't settle for a career that is giving people programs that they're not able to follow through on and stick to, even if it's totally realistic. I wasn't making anyone do extremes, no extreme fasting, no extreme dieting, just simple building lifestyle habits, but yet nobody could stick to it long term.
Yeah. Jake, I got to know what's going through your mind right now, because I feel like there's bits and pieces of what Gina has just shared that I know have been part of Jake's experience. So I have to know what your questions are for her about this.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's that was a very personal for me, but then just I thought of it as I can think back to when I was playing professional sports or, high level sports, like the nutrition at that point was, it seemed easier because the purpose was different. It was almost like food is fuel. It's not like for enjoyment. It's not for anything else. It's like we go lift weights and we eat because that's what we need. The purpose was to become a better athlete. But to your point, I mean, this whole battle with nutrition for me personally has been a lifelong thing of I know what I should be doing, but why am I not doing it?
Exactly.
It's, and the psychology around that of the answer, here's
Totally.
the road. It's already paved. It's a perfect, beautiful road down this way. Why would I take this bumpy one over here that I know is going to,
why would I do that?
Yeah. So it's, I don't know. I mean, I guess my question would be, it's why is that? Why is it such a challenge psychology when you know the answer,
Yeah, it's a great question. And I love that question. Why would I make a different choice when I know I want something different? I know the answers. And that's what I started to figure out was most of my clients had a really solid knowledge base. They could tell me a lot about nutrition. I was really impressed, and they actually didn't need more nutrition knowledge. And what I want to share about this too is this was really personal to me, because as I was going through this time, I was building up so much knowledge. I mean, I had an undergrad degree in nutrition. I had a master's. I was going to conferences, and I was trying to figure this out and crack this code. And I was really healthy myself, and I was actually in good shape at the time. But it felt like a fight to hold on. I was really trying to use a lot of willpower. I had to create a lot of motivation every day. And the more that I kept doing that, the more it felt like I was getting further and further and further from this natural, rested, healthy place. And it felt very intense. And as life started to come my way and I went through a lot of personal challenges, I started noticing that I was doing the same thing my clients were. When I was having a hard time, I would start to lose that ability to stay healthy. And I would realize oh my gosh, there are moments when I can't stay on track and I'm trying to have more willpower, and it became more and more intense. So the reason why I bring this up is because I'm the perfect example of you can have a lot of knowledge about nutrition. You can have a lot of motivation and a lot of reason and dedication to be healthy, but sometimes that's still not enough. Sometimes there's even a deeper driver than that. And it didn't matter how much I shamed myself because I'm a dietitian and I should be stepping up a certain way, or I should be eating a certain way. It didn't matter how much I shamed myself, how much I scared myself with health facts, how much lab work I did to see if there was something I could scare myself into. It didn't really matter. There was something deeper that drives us, that is deeper than facts, that's deeper than your desire to look a certain way. And that actually comes down to our human instincts that I didn't realize and understand. So I want to break this down a little bit.
Please say more about this,
Uh,
because I think this is going to be super important for everyone to hear, because something that really stands out from what you just said is that, we often use the healthful, I'm using quote unquote, healthful choices. We use them almost as like a punishment for ourselves, that we're somehow not enough because we don't, or that by even just like, not quite making it to the finish line, like you had a great day, but like one food choice messed it up or something. And we carry that with us. So I'm so interested to know more about like what you have found as the underlying factors that's deeper than that.
I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that all or nothing mentality. I slipped up once and now it's over. And it just sends us on this roller coaster of, I have to be perfect. And if I slip up, then it's over. And then, oh, forget it. I might as well finish the box of cookies because I got to start over perfect again on Monday, right? And it creates this roller coaster effect. But the way that I like to actually shift is, instead of feeling this frustration and anger and shame with what our bodies are doing, we can look at it through the lens of having a really beautiful respect and reverence for why our bodies are built the way that they are, and realize that there's a reason why your body is doing this. And so this, you might not initially, you might be like, no, I'm so angry at my body. It feels like my body is waging a war against me. It won't cooperate. But if you understand the mechanism of what's happening, all of a sudden it loses its power over you and you can do something different instead of getting trapped in these cycles. So the reason why this happens is because normally on a normal day, when you're just chilling, you're having a good day, maybe the sun is out, you're not stressed, you're probably a lot more likely to like eat the salad, right? Like you're feeling really good, you're well rested, you have good energy, it's a nice day, you're happy. It's probably a lot more easy to have willpower and you're like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to have the salad. And you're really motivated, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely so. But we live in Minnesota and Wisconsin where like half of the year it's like cold and you're in hibernation mode.
So I'm originally from Michigan, so I really understand that.
Yeah.
So when you're in that state and your body is calm, it's a certain area of your brain that's actually active and working. It's called your prefrontal cortex. And that's where you can have good decision making. You can decide if you want to eat the salad because you want to lose weight. Your body feels safe. Your body feels calm. But if there's something that sends a signal to your brain that there's some sort of stress, that activates a different area of your brain, and that's known as the amygdala. Your amygdala is your fight or flight brain. It's your survival brain. Its sole purpose is to keep you alive. And that can be turned on for any reason. It could start early in the morning as those stress hormones slowly build up because you have things to do. Maybe you check your phone and there's emails, or you have places to go, or you have kids to feed, or you have dogs, or maybe you're really stressed. Maybe you're unhappy. Maybe you're lonely. Maybe you're just really busy, or you're tired, or maybe you're bored at work. Any of these types of inputs can be received as a stress to the brain. And a lot of us are so busy going, living in our minds that we don't feel the subtle shifts that our body is actually going into that fight or flight state. So when that part of your brain gets turned on, its sole purpose is to keep you alive. So maybe if you are feeling tired because you didn't get enough sleep, well, that part of your brain is like, okay, this human did not get enough energy sleeping last night. We need to make sure that he or she is very well fed so that they have enough calories for survival. And so the body actually shifts its physiology. It'll release stress hormones in the bloodstream so that you are actually very alert for survival. You might notice that like your breathing gets shallow, your heart might start racing a little bit. They're really subtle nuances, but your body will almost feel like it's on the prowl for food. Almost like this kind of animalistic, like you're almost very magnetic towards looking for food. And it could be sweets. It could be anything, like you just want to eat something. It's almost like this primal thing happens. And you might be like, man, I don't know why I just want to snack all day today. I don't know why I'm really craving sweets at the end of the night. Or, I don't know why I had my meal. This should be plenty, but I just feel insatiable. And the body's whole physiology switches over to seeking food. And it actually shuts down things like weight loss, because weight loss is not a good survival mechanism.
Right.
We have to be safe.
Yes.
Yeah.
So mentally, your mind is like, I really want to get in shape for my trip in a month. And I really want to be healthy, or whatever it is. I really want to lose those extra 10 pounds. But what is deeper in prioritizing you to eat food is this actual instinctual mechanism. Our basic human needs are food, water, shelter. So if that becomes a priority, that you're in survival, that's going to be the priority, not your goals. And then you're going to be left wondering, why can't I do it? Why don't I have more discipline and willpower? And it's not about that. It's actually just learning, why is your body going into that state?
So is that like, how does somebody start to navigate that then? If that's something that they have yet never even noticed, right? Like maybe they do feel that mental component of the thought pattern maybe,
Yep.
but how do they start to shift into the more subtle signs of the body?
Yeah. So I like to break it down into phases, because a lot of people have the expectation, oh, once I have an awareness that I'm eating when I'm stressed or grabbing sugar when I'm stressed, that means I should be able to break that habit. But it actually takes a dedication to learning about what your body is communicating to you and practicing it almost like as if you're learning a new instrument. If you've never learned how to work with your body in this way, it's going to look clunky. It's not going to be pretty. It's things that it's taken me years to practice and kind of figure out this process. But here's kind of what I've seen from the people that I work with. They almost always follow this pattern. First, they're typically living their life unaware and on autopilot. So they're actually grabbing choices without really reflecting on, why are they making those choices? Why is their body controlling them to do it? It actually feels like something is controlling them, almost like a puppet. So the first stage is kind of like that autopilot where you're unaware. And then maybe you hear a podcast or something like this and it clicks in your mind and it really makes sense. And you're like, wow, I bet my body is doing that. That makes a lot of sense. And so what you'll do is you might go about your day and you're living on autopilot again, but then you make the choice and you don't feel good after. And you're like, shoot, I think that just happened. You have kind of awareness after it happened. And you're like, dang it, I didn't even think about it. How did that happen? I was just in that process. And then once you start recognizing that, you slowly move it up earlier and earlier if you're dedicated to really wanting to learn about yourself. I think of it as like, I am going to be my own research project. Why do I do what I do? Let me get curious with myself. And so throughout the day, I'm checking in and I'm like, why am I doing that? So you'll start to actually notice patterns. When do I go grab a snack? What are my patterns? And I might look for, oh, you know what? At 5 o'clock, I go straight to the kitchen and I grab a snack, and it's right as my workday is wrapping up. My stress hormones have built up. I haven't checked in with myself all day. That makes a lot of sense. And so I might start being a little more proactive about, okay, 5 o'clock is my time that I really struggle with. How do I start planning for that earlier in the day? And so I would actually I set an alarm because I couldn't remember. It wasn't natural yet. I would set an alarm on my phone at like noon and 3 o'clock. And those are my times I would take a pause. I'd step back from work and I would just breathe with my body and start to get really sensitive to those shifts and sensations and how they start to shift. Most people's bodies will shift hours before they have a food craving, but they just live in their heads and they're not noticing the shifts of what's happening in their bodies. So there's kind of two things you can do. One is that you can check in with your body throughout the day and start to notice the little tiny micro shifts of your body telling you that you're in a stress response. So start to notice, are my muscles contracted? I started to notice that I was clenching my jaw all day long. I was holding my breath, clenching my jaw. My heart would start to race. When cravings would come on, I'd start thinking in my mind and my attention would kind of leave my body and pull up into my mind. And I'd start on this like animalistic prowl for food. But as I could start bringing my attention down into my body and noticing, okay, I'm starting to switch into that fight or flight response. How can I use my breath to start calming my body and teaching my body that it's actually safe? Now, the other thing that you can do is you can actually kind of prime that connection by maybe just spending a few minutes in the morning. If you do a meditation, that's great. If you're not a meditator, you can just spend a couple minutes breathing with your body And if that makes you really uncomfortable, you're like, I don't have the time for this. I'm bad at this. I'm not a meditator. If you're one of those people who says that, there's a good chance that there's a lot of stress hormones that are built up in your body that you're not comfortable yet being with and teaching to calm down. So you're like, I got to jump into productivity. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%.
I think,
yeah, Jake, go ahead.
Something's really been, this is a huge mental shift. That's just listening to you talk. What's crazy though, to think about is like, that idea of like food being like that safety of like, I need this to survive, cause at least for me and like just the way that my male brain works, right? It's like that concept you said earlier of like hanging on to health. I mean, that's very powerful for me personally. Yeah. And then on top of that, when, you have that kind of response of like not feeling safe, eat something bad, then it's like, okay, 10-mile run. And then that starts like stacking on each other. Like, I had a pizza, so I have to work out again, or I did this, so I have to do that. And then it like just builds this like crazy lifestyle of like, man, I'm like you said, Cole, earlier, like I'm legitimately punishing myself to be healthy.
Yep. And does that feel like safety to your body? How's your body going to respond to that?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
That's wild to think about it with that fight or flight, of like, I'm doing this because my body's like, please stop, shut down.
You can't lose weight if you don't feel safe.
Yeah.
Fat is protection, it's protection for our organs.
Right.
So if we don't feel safe, we can't lose weight.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's wild.
I'm also super curious to know in relation to that, what you're describing about the stress hormones and kind of getting more attuned to the nuances of that, body sensation of the fight or flight stress response. So in the work that Jake and I do in coaching, like this awareness that you're talking about is right, like at the center of this type of work. Like you can't change anything until you have eyes on it, right?
Yep.
But I'm so curious to know, okay, so number one, what about the folks who really are never out of fight or flight? Like, is there capacity for them to kind of downregulate and notice the body? That's my first question, because a lot of people I know that they're never not in fight or flight. So what do those folks do? And for some people that's going to be like, well, yeah, I wake up in the morning and I'm spinning already and I go to bed like that. So for people who are really turned up in that stress response, we're same place, still start in the body, or are there other things to think about?
Yeah, that's a great question, because a lot of people will be like, what do you want me to do? Get rid of my kids? Like,
yeah.
What am I going to do? I can't get rid of my children. I can't get rid of my life,
Right.
And this is a really great way that I learned when I was really struggling, full anxiety and the storm in my mind. And I was really busy trying to build a business. And I had a mentor at the time really help me. And this one analogy helped me a lot. Because I was like, what am I going to do? I can't just stop working and meditate all day. And he said, this is what I want you to think of. I want you to be like a Zen window washer. I want your hands to move fast on the outside, but on the inside, you're like calm and collected. And you're just like, you're moving fast. You're doing what you need to do. But this is what the practice is. The practice is life will be life around us. But can we allow life to happen fast? Can it happen busy, but not let it? We need to retrain our nervous systems to come on when they're meant to come on. And our nervous systems are beautiful to keep us alive, but we want to work on training it to live life not in a survival state, because those stress hormones do wear down the body. And eventually that's where you hit that adrenal fatigue and exhaustion. You can have the same amount of busyness in life, but actually retrain how your system responds to that busyness. So you're in this connected space. And it does take time. It does take time, but it takes a desire to say, I love my body. I love my family so much. I want to show up for myself. I want to show up for my family, that I want to have this connection with my body and not just abandon my body because I have things to do. And so that can be done. You don't have to spend an hour, sitting on the floor meditating. But what you can do is use it as a moment to moment experience. So when my clients, when they have to set all these goals, I got to do my workout, I got to drink my water, I got to take my supplements, I got to go for a run, I have to meditate, and they have to add all these things, they get overwhelmed and it becomes more stress. But when we can just say, hey, use presence and the connection with your body as your moment to moment teacher of what you really need, now they can actually allow their habits to come through living through their body. So instead of mentally deciding, I'm going to eat this, I'm going to drink that, I'm going to do this exercise, it's a very mental way of approaching health. But our bodies are designed to tell us, when do we need movement? When do we need rest? When do we need food? When do we need snacks, water? Like, our bodies are designed with that beautiful wisdom. But instead we retreat to our mind and say, cut off connection from my body, or else, my body would trick me or something, right? Like we don't trust its signals, or that we can trust it, but we actually can. And having that respect and reverence for it is when, we rest when we need to rest, we move it when we need to move it. But I think that it takes away the pressure of making health a long list of to-dos that you're never going to get to, that you're chasing after. But what I think that the easiest, most accessible, most affordable way to actually come back to your body is to take a slow breath. And as you breathe in, like, you breathe into your body, and then as you exhale, you drop your attention down into your body, and then just maybe asking some questions. What does my body really need right now? And you'll discover if it needs food, if it needs rest, if it just needs one moment to pause. And maybe you just need like 30 seconds to breathe and recalibrate your nervous system. It doesn't have to be that you take hours away from life, but just letting like presence and connection with your body allow the healthier habits to come through you instead of forcing them onto you.
I'm excited that this podcast is brought to you by mkforhealth.com. Have you been looking for a powerful antioxidant to help support your immune health? Hello, of course we have. Look no further. mkforhealth.com offers an amazing product called Nutrimetrics OPC3. This product is an isotonic-capable food supplement chock full of powerhouse antioxidants. Ingredients like citrus extract bioflavonoids, bilberry, grapeseed, red wine, and pine bark extracts, all incredible antioxidants. Then you have the OPCs. The oligomeric proanthocyanidins are bioflavonoids found in fruits, vegetables, and certain tree barks that have exceptional benefit to the human body. Studies have shown that these OPCs are up to 20 times more powerful than vitamin C and 50 times more powerful than vitamin E in neutralizing free radicals. Hello, sign me up for that. Nutrimetrics OPC3 also contains the only isotonic form of pygaginol in the world. Number 1, remember, isotonic, readily absorbed. Number 2, pygaginol, my new favorite word, is a natural plant extract from the bark of a French maritime pine tree, and it is the most clinically researched and potent bioflavonoid found. If you're ready to support your immune health and modulate inflammation in your system, all with incredible powerhouse antioxidants, natural extracts, and ingredients, this is your product. Go to www.mkforhealth.com to purchase your Nutrimetrics OPC3 today. That's www.mk4health.com.
That's so cool. I think thinking about having a relationship with your body, because it's easy mentally, right? You're like, oh yeah, me with me, got it, Yep. But it's almost like quieting the mind so that you can have that, relationship with your body and actually hear, feel what's going on. I think that's massive. And all that could pop up in my head was like, if my body could talk, it would tell me like, I hate your guts. Like you beat me up. You're, like,
As Jake's wearing his jinjitsu sweatshirt, he's the kind of that guy that goes hard.
Yeah, but there's a major shift there, because that's, there's a healthy way to really live an active, super physical lifestyle. But, there are days where your body might tell you like, I cannot do this today. Just let me sit, be still,
Yeah. I would imagine I'd imagine it's probably really hard being in sports, like any kind of competitive sport, where they teach you, discipline and mental strength, and to like outbeat what your body's capable of, you can do more, and to like they probably teach you how to have that disconnection so that you can push harder, right? I would bet.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, that's how you have a broken foot, but you still can play, or you do something to your shoulder or whatever. Yeah, it's like, that's kind of the athlete mind of me is like, well, yeah, I can mentally muscle through any type of body weakness or ailment or whatever. But then that just compounds on itself, and all of a sudden you might have a small little thing that turns into this massive problem that could literally shut you down for months. So
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting thing, but I can feel my mind, like as you're talking, it's like there's a lot of unraveling that needs to happen for me personally, because the health is not like, like just every day, just grind.
Yeah, even like the words you used of just like peace, harmony, in connection with, I mean, like there's so many things where it's like there's a lot of opportunity. The other thing I wanted to ask you about that awareness piece is that I always say, like, if you really want to start to build awareness, food is actually a great place to start, because we're in interaction with food all day, every day. I mean, unless you're doing some kind of fast or something, like if you're trying to build awareness in a relationship, that can be a little bit harder. Maybe you don't see that person that often, or maybe, the hard conversations are few and far between, or whatever it is, but food is there all the time. So as people start to have like more awareness around their food behaviors, what else do you see unfold for them?
Oh my gosh. I use food as an entryway. It's kind of like that entryway. And what most people say is like, I had no idea that this was so much greater than just my food. And I think food is such a beautiful mirror for your life. I love that you said that, that it's a great way to start with awareness. And so I noticed, like, what was the energy that I was approaching my relationship to food? Was it intense? Was it fast? Was it forced? Was it stressful? And how did my life actually mirror that same intensity? Trying to control and stressful and like very rigid, very fast, very rigid. And through the practice, my food was such a mirror for me to actually find it to be nurturing and pleasurable and present and slow and connected. And I almost found this like rhythm and flow and harmony, with my body, where health actually naturally flowed from the inside out. And my food is a really beautiful reflection of that. When it's tense, same thing with relationships. Is there tension in the relationships? Is there controlling? Is there frustration? So this could ripple from anything of like how you feel about yourself, your relationship to yourself, your self-talk, the intensity of which you connect with your body, versus this connection and, mutual respect and enjoyment and pleasure and presence and honoring and all these things that we can slowly move from one to the other. I think as people work on their relationship to food, they have so much self-trust that they've been really craving to experience, like deeper self-trust. And that just creates such a difference in the way that they show up with their families, with their life, with their work, just so much more presence and calm and connection. And I think honoring just themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that it's like gets to be like a gateway to so much else, because I mean, what a beautiful gateway too, because if we have more healthful nutrition and a healthier lifestyle and better connection to food, like, yeah, okay, I have more awareness now around how I cultivate that, but like the health of who and how I get to be now, like ripples out into other things too, which is really cool.
Yeah.
I have a couple of questions for you specific to things our audience are going through related to family. The first of which, and sorry, Jake, but this is for the moms out there, but our audience has been pregnant, nursing, having babies for a lot of us years, like lots of years. Say a little bit about like the changing relationship of us to our bodies in sort of this state of flux of, in and out of growing humans and taking care of them. And the bridge to this it's not the willpower. We don't need to self-sabotage ourselves. Like, what are some of the connections for the postpartum and, postpartum group that are a part of our group
Yeah.
here?
Oh, that's such a great question. And I can only speak from how I think my life will continue to shift and what I've seen other people shift. I don't have babies. I haven't had any babies yet, but I can speak from what I would imagine, what I would like to go into that experience with, or what other people have. And I think that it's really powerful to go through every shift and experience with gentleness and really asking yourself, how do I have my own back right now? Like, as I am today, right now in this moment. And sometimes you might have days that are really hard days, and you might be trying to justify why, or you should have that hard day, or you shouldn't, or you should just have all these different things. But just asking yourself, like, with where I'm at presently right now, how do I have my own back? And sometimes we have that we put that pressure and that expectation of, well, I was able to run 10 miles 5 years ago. So then we're hard on ourselves for, why can't I do that today? Why can't I show up? Why can't I be that way that I was in the past? And I think that it's really doing a disservice to how your body is growing and changing and what its purpose is in each and every moment. And so even if that means today I'm going to show up and nurture my body as much as what feels really, truly good to my body as it is now, without comparing myself to anyone else or comparing myself to who I was in the past. And I think one thing that commonly shows up for women is they tend to compare themselves to their husbands. I think men, typically, not always, and this is kind of a generalization, but sometimes men can have a greater capacity for exercise or for eating more calories. Their bodies tend to burn more calories, or they tend to have more discipline or more willpower. And a lot of women will build up a resentment of, but he can do it, why can't I? And they try to make themselves fit into the box that their husbands are in. He can fast, so I should also be able to fast. Or he can do this long bike ride, so I should have to keep up if I want to be as fit as him. And that might not actually be what is honoring to your body in that moment. And so I think it's trusting in what your body needs, and allowing yourself to use things like nutrition and meal plans, and like use those things as tools. Don't use them as the end all be all for what your body really needs. And I think that there can be such an honoring and a respect for our bodies when we see that our bodies have always done the best that it could and did its best to actually take care of you through the shifting chapters. So as you had to carry a baby, your body may have needed more weight at that time. And, as you're shifting through maybe some very hard life challenges or experiences where your body was like, we need to support her with food and, get her through this very difficult chapter, whether it's emotionally, physically, mentally, whatever, financial, and just having this really beautiful reverence for our bodies are always trying to do the best that it can to support us through difficult transitions. And we can, with that awareness, I think we can ask ourselves, how can I really support my body right now? Or maybe I was needing that safety 5 years ago and it just kind of carried on through as a habit. Maybe I can have a little self-reflection of, is that same way that I'm doing it, is it still serving me? Do I still need it? Or did my mind, body not quite catch up to what is present today? And just constantly coming back to that love and connection and asking, like, what does my body need instead of what is everybody else doing?
Yeah.
I think that's an incredible thing, like, to be vulnerable with your spouse on that.
Yeah.
I mean, what an amazing connection with your husband or wife to be able to, as a husband, to say to my wife, like, explore that together, right? And like we've talked about this before on a podcast about fitness, of like, we don't have to have the same fitness plan, we have to support each other in purpose of like, hey, this is what my wife is shooting for in her life, this is what I am. Obviously there's parallels, right, of like we want to do that with connection with each other. But that could be so lost with food of like,
it can actually create tension.
Thing?
It can actually really create tension in a relationship, because I think men like to be the fixers and the helpers, and they're very like logical. They're like, here, this is what I'm doing. This is working for me. Now, why can't you just do it? And women tend to be a little bit more complex. We have a little bit more emotions, hormones, a lot of different complexities. And so if we're trying to do the same thing and it's not working, it can create a lot of tension. But actually having the open dialogue about, okay, let's be our own research projects. Let's discover and support each other and what's going to work for each of us, and really support each other in that, can really bring somebody together, a couple together.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's incredible. That's really cool.
Yeah. And the fact that it's so foundational, like as Jake and you are kind of, highlighting some of the points within this, my mind went back to what we talked about with the safety and like, is my body okay? And if we can have the space within our relationship where we are creating this underlying foundation of safety, like, whoa, now there's,
I mean, it could be present day. It could be showing up present day. Like, hey, are we feeling safe in this environment together? And a lot of people think of safety as like physical, and that is one important aspect. But it could be a lot of different things together. It could be how you have conversations. It could also go all the way as far as back to childhood.
Yeah.
And before we're the age of 7, 1 through 7, that's where we're interpreting the world and we're building how we relate to the world. So if you were 7 years old and maybe you actually didn't have a safe environment that you grew up in, and maybe started to actually seek food for that safety. But it could also just be that your mom had to go to work and a babysitter came over, and you interpreted it as, oh my gosh, my mom is abandoning me. Now you created this safety trigger in your mind, and you might actually hold that abandonment fear and actually seek food every time that gets triggered. And so it might not make sense as to why you don't feel safe. It might not make sense present day. You're like, ooh, I'm not feeling safety. Let me explore that. And maybe let me explore that with my partner. And you might find, wow, this memory came up, or this experience came up, or for some reason, when you leave, it triggers my abandonment fears, or maybe not that it's their fault, but exploring that. And sometimes that exploration alone can be really healing.
Absolutely. The other aspect that is present for our audience is that we are taking care of families. So it's one thing, I think, to have like your own stuff where you're like, okay, I'm trying to create my own physical awareness and understand my own body and my own needs. But for all of us, we have other people we're taking care of. So insights, like suggestions, things where it's like, where we can build more of a foundation where our kids like only know this as how they relate to food. Some insights around that family dynamic of nutrition and food.
It can be a little bit of a rocky transition if your family is used to doing things a certain way. So for example, if you're trying to have dinner where you're really connecting to your food, it could create a little disruption if all of a sudden you're like, no TV, and everyone's used to TV. It can create a little disruption. But I think that families do adapt. And one of the coolest things, a lot of my students actually say this, those who have young kids will be like, wow, I never realized that my children are my greatest teachers. And my children, if they're young enough, if they haven't gotten to the point where they start to like have these different influences, sometimes as they get older, they have just society's different influences. But if they're young enough, sometimes even as they get older, you can observe them and watch how they still are very tapped into their wisdom. Sometimes they will still tap into eating and just stopping when they're done. And they're like, I'm done, I'm full. And you're like, what? You don't want to finish that amazingly delicious pizza? And they're like, nope, I'm good. My body said I'm fine, Or they choose certain foods, or sometimes they don't want the unhealthy food, or you just never know. I know all kids are really different. But what is cool is to start bringing that, not you can't eat certain foods and rules. That gets weird, right? When you start telling kids, just like an adult, a kid, anyone, if you say you can't have it, you want it now. And it creates this weird relationship. But just by starting the open dialogue of, how does your body feel? How much food do you think, how does your body feel as you're eating? Do you actually feel full? And you can start that conversation, or just saying like, hey guys, tonight we're all going to actually have good conversation, and we're going to connect with our food instead of the TV tonight. and just start that open dialogue. It doesn't have to be like all rules, everything is changing from here forward. But I think that when you shift your energy, the family starts to just naturally feel that shift in you. And I think that there can be a learning dynamic between everyone in the family. I mean, look at how much, as soon as we had this conversation, it's like everybody can relate in some way.
Yeah.
And I think at any age, kids can relate to how they feel about their food, how they're relating to it, maybe questions they've never asked themselves, depending on what age they are. But I think there's always ways that you can start bringing in the energy of connection and just having a little bit more awareness and changing the conversation away from can and can't have to just more attention on how does your body feel, or do you like this, or what does it taste like? What does it feel like in your mouth? What is it, bringing the connection back into awareness?
Yeah. And eliminating those distractions when possible so that, so that you can get out of that mental space and actually know what on earth your body's trying to tell you. Yeah. That's
well, and again, too, just with your kids, same thing as your wife, instead of being like, finish your food, it's like, because maybe that's what's been like subconsciously programmed from what our parents said to us or whatever, ask some inquisitive questions, like just ask them. Like, no, I don't want any more. Oh, okay. Or whatever, but we just get, I don't know, we have all these weird programs that's like, these go-to things like eat your food, eat your vegetables, whatever,
Yeah. And you can have some boundaries too. Like, I know some people are probably thinking, well, if I gave my kid the opportunity not to eat dinner, they'd say no dinner, but then they'd want snacks, and then I can't give them rules. I can't tell them no. And it's not necessarily about never having rules. You can have some boundaries and just say that, no, this is time for dinner food. This is all we're going to eat. If you're full, that's okay. You can come back to dinner food. Having some boundaries, I think, is good, but not completely saying, we can only eat these healthy foods and creating this weird like restriction, but just trying to bring it back to their body and just having some healthy boundaries.
And start allowing them to stay tapped into their awareness, right? Because they aren't shut off from it. They still have it. So I think about that all the time. Like, I'm a yoga teacher, and my one of my teachers, her children are incredibly flexible. And she always says, like, never stop doing the splits, because you'll never get they're so hard to get back. And body awareness is like that, right? Like, you cut it off slowly but surely, and then it's like really a lot to train it to come back.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I know people's wheels are going to be spinning, both like how they, can reconnect to themselves and not necessarily muscle through it, but actually have a connection to their body and what that might mean for their nutrition and overall health of their lifestyle. Where should people go to find more about you and your resources and things that you offer?
Yeah, I think just one tip at the end of the day, start just being proactive about living a life of awareness, using that breath to connect to your body. And instead of shaming your body or judging it or feeling frustration, just getting curious with it, asking questions, starting to explore it. And you wouldn't believe how much you can learn about yourself and that relationship with your body. So it's so beautiful. It's so empowering to really just be willing to have that relationship. I do have a lot of free resources. I do a newsletter every week that has some good nutrition advice, some mindset shifts that I do every week on ginaworful.com. And there's some other free resources, and I teach classes and work with people as well. So there's all sorts of good stuff on there.
Well,
and I'm also on Instagram as well, gina.worful.
Okay. Well, we will make sure that all of your details are in our show notes so that people can click on over and find out more about you. And start down the gateway. That is the path, the path through food and body awareness and everything else that might just be on the other side of that. I think that's a really exciting and super empowering way to think about food and nutrition. So just appreciate so much you joining us today, Gina, and all the great insights and tips that you shared. Super grateful.
Great to be here. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everybody, for your time, and we'll catch you next time.